Okay, ELA1 students. Last week, we looked at the hero's journey. We talked about the definitions of each part, and in fact, that was your assignment, was to familiarize yourself with each part of the hero's journey. This essentially came up with by a guy named Joseph Campbell. He actually worked with many of the directors from the 1970s, including George Lucas. As you may know, Luke Skywalker goes through the hero cycle. But if you look at a lot of the stories today, especially any Marvel movie, Iron Man, Spider-Man, they all go through the hero's journey. Harry Potter goes through the hero's journey. Percy Jackson goes through the hero's journey. Bilbo Baggins, Frodo Baggins. In fact, many Disney movies and Pixar movies do the hero's journey as well. The Matrix, Neo, goes through the hero's journey. Back to the Future, Marty McFly goes through the hero's journey. This is in many, many stories, and I think it's really cool. The more you get to know it, the more you're going to recognize it. So now that you know the basic parts, and by the way, let me just explain, you can look up the hero's journey on many sites. I like using these 12 basic parts. You can break it up more, so you can find, the jester characters. You can find the belly of the whale section. You can find the magical helper section. So you can find versions that are smaller than our 12-point version. You can find versions that are larger. I kind of took the middle one. I've always used this one. This was the one I was first introduced to in college. But you can look it up, and there's all sorts of parts. It was really, really developed. It comes from a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. And it's broken up into a lot of parts, but we're using the 12-part one for our purposes. Also wanted to note, with the Odyssey, now Homer was accredited with it, but he was really just one of many, many, many storytellers. And if you start to dig into Greek mythology, you will find, I mentioned this on one of the slides, you will find variations. For example, Achilles, who is a famous Greek hero. We get the Achilles heel from this. He was killed by Paris in the Trojan War. Now, his birth story, he is a demigod, meaning his dad, I believe, was Zeus, his mom was immortal. And in some interpretations, he was burned with ambrosia in order to give him godlike protection. And when he was pulled out of the fire as a baby, they grabbed him by his Achilles heel, and that is like the only place where the ashes came off. Thus, that is his only weak spot. In other stories, he was dipped in a sacred river and was pulled out by his heel, and that is the Achilles heel, and that is his only weakness. So there are many variations. In fact, even when you come across pronunciations, Ithaca, Ithaki, for Odysseus's home, Telemachus, Telemachus, even heroes like Hercules, Heracles. There are variations, and it really just depends on the original interpretation, which Greek poet, eventually wrote it down or who was credited with it. So there are variations, and there are variations I bring up in this story as well. For example, I think it is the reward. So, for example, Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. Is his reward the lightsaber he gets from his father? Or his reward is perhaps the Force, special knowledge? The answer is yes. It can be both. And by no means does it have to go in this order. In fact, some movies, it goes a little out of order. Maybe they meet the mentor first and then refuse the call, and then the mentor talks him into it. Maybe, some of the things are a little bit out of order. Sometimes you don't use every exact point. However, for our purposes, we've got all those points here. And even in our purposes, sometimes the road back, some authors will say it's Zeus crushing his ship on the sea. Some authors say Poseidon. We're going to go with Poseidon. So anyway, this is our version. I know students who get into Greek mythology, you have learned one thing. Again, there's so many interpretations. I've got a great book I use in school, and you can look up a story, and it will show you multiple versions of that story. Did Ovid tell it? Did, Virgil tell it? Who told these stories? And the small differences are just that. They are differences. So for me, does Luke Skywalker, is his reward the lightsaber, or is it the Force? The answer is yes. For us, the road back, the chase scene, it's Poseidon. Okay? So anyway, I'm going to go through it. this is what we are assigning, so this is what you're responsible for, so here we go. Maybe. There we go. The ordinary world. So again, we are following the cycle here all the way around. So let's go to the ordinary world. For Odysseus, it's king of Ithaca. Here is his little home. He is king of Ithaca. He is happy there in his home. The next version is the call to adventure. Well, Helen, the queen of Sparta, is stolen and brought to Troy. She actually does end up falling in love with Paris, who is the guy that stole her, and really loves him in the end. But regardless, she is taken from Menelaus, her husband, who's king of Sparta. She never really liked Menelaus. He's kind of a jerk. His brother, Agamemnon's even worse. However, Helen, is known as the face that launched 1,000 ships. So because Helen was stolen, all the Greek city-states want to go get her back and start the Trojan War. The refusal of the call. For Odysseus, he says, no, I don't want to go to Troy. I've got my wife Penelope. I've got my newborn son Telemachus. He even goes as far as to pretend he's crazy to not go. However, we all know he ends up going. Why does he end up going? Well, the meeting of the mentor. Again, there's different versions of this as to did a god come and intervene. There's also one king that comes, but mostly you hear about the Council of the Kings. That is all the Greek city-states. Now, at this time, you've got Greece, is not one giant country. It is a collection of city-states. Sometimes they fight against each other, especially Athens and Sparta. Sometimes they band together. In this case, all the Greek city-states, the kings, get together, and they talk about it. They say, yeah, it'd be nice to return Helen, and that's just going to be our excuse, but Troy's a very wealthy city, and they know the reward would be fantastic for them if they were able to plunder Troy. So they kind of use Helen as excuse. The Greek kings of the city-states get together, and they twist Odysseus' arm, saying, yeah, it'll be good for Ithaca. Crossing on the threshold. Odysseus leaves his home and heads to Troy. He's gone there for 10 years, as with all the other Greek city-states and all their warriors. Now, you got to imagine, if you're a Trojan kid, you wake up every day for 10 years, you can't leave your wall. You can't leave the city. It is a walled city. You're stuck inside. They've got plenty of rations, but every day you look over those mighty walls of Troy and you see your bay is besieged with 1,000 Greek ships, day in, day out, 10 years. Then all of a sudden, one day they get up and all the ships are gone. The sea is empty. What had happened? Well, Odysseus, he decides to construct what is called the Trojan horse. He pretends that all the Greeks have left. They really sail around the bay. He, Odysseus, and an elite hit squad go into the middle of this statue. So when the Greeks see that they're gone, they think, oh my gosh, they've left us this homage, this prize, we won, huzzah. They wheel in the horse, unknowingly bringing in this hit squad that's hidden inside. They party like there's no tomorrow because the war is over. So about 3 a.m, Odysseus and his little hit squad climb out, sneak around to the back gate where all the Greek city-state warriors are waiting. They open the door. They sack the town. Odysseus, as we were about to see in the Odyssey, is known for this. He's known the world over as the guy that won the Trojan War. Odysseus was a new kind of hero. He was not a demigod. He did not have immortal parents. And most Greek boys and girls didn't have immortal parents. Odysseus was not known for his strength. And most Greek boys and girls didn't have superhuman strength. However, they related to Odysseus. He was mortal just like they are mortal. He doesn't have strength just like they don't have mighty strength. Well, Odysseus is strong, but he's known mainly for his cunning, which is referred to as metis. He's the one that came up with this idea, and he is certainly accredited for winning the Trojan War. So crossing the threshold, he agrees, and they go fight the Trojan War, which takes 10 years. Tests, challenges, also called test challenges, enemies and allies. After leaving Troy, Odysseus takes another 10 years to get home, so that's 20 years all in all that he will be gone. Along the way, he encounters many test challenges and enemies, such as Cyclops, Calypso, Siren, Scylla, Charybdis, and a whole host of others. The approach. Along the way, Odysseus and his men encounter Circe. Now, she is often referred to as a lesser goddess, or a nymph, or a sorceress, or a witch. At one point, she turns his men into swine. Odysseus, remember, a myth. The point of it is a model or a warning. You either do like the hero, or you don't do like the hero. And always, 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 it teaches cultural importance. It teaches the things that the culture value. Well, Odysseus, like a good leader, this is a model of behavior. He doesn't turn tail and leave his men behind. A good soldier doesn't leave his men behind. Odysseus goes to get his men back. In fact, he meets Hermes along the way. Hermes says there is this drink that Circe is giving everybody that's turning him into swine, so I'm going to give you magical protection. He gives him mole or moly, and it's where we actually get the term holy moly, I kid you not. He uses this mole or this holy moly to protect himself from Circe's spell. She realizes she can't turn him into swine. She has no power against him, so he forces her to turn his men back. He also needs help to get home, so he forces her to reveal a secret route to a hidden place. That place is where they go next, and that is called the ordeal or abyss. It is sometimes referred to as death, and in this case, it is the literal land of the dead. Circe revealed a secret route to a secret place, and that is Hades. Obviously, any mortal can get to Hades. You just got to do one thing: die. Odysseus doesn't want to do that, so he finds this secret route to get to Hades. Once there, he meets many people that were once living. They're referred to as shades. Now remember, this is just like the afterlife. It is a non-place, not really good, not really bad. There is a corner, there is a section of Hades reserved for punishment. That's called Tartarus. That's where the bad guys, I guess, those that have wronged the gods, the gods get the retribution on them in Tartarus. But for the most part, Hades is just where the shades or the ghosts or the souls are. He goes there and meets Tiresias. Tiresias is a blind prophet, which is rather ironic because he has special sight, but of course he is blind. Tiresias gives him a prophecy. The prophecy basically says, if you do this, you'll get home quick. If you don't, it's going to be a rough way to go. So he knows what he needs to do. He gets this knowledge from Tiresias. That is the reward, the Tiresian prophecy. The road back. Now, I talked about this a little bit. For certain interpretations, the road back in our purposes is Poseidon chasing after Odysseus. Poseidon, at first, when the Trojan War started, he liked the Greeks. You're going to see that many of the gods are either on the Trojan side or the Greek side. They like some of the Greeks, they don't like some of the Greeks. And at first he was on the side of the Greeks. But then he felt they were cocky. They didn't offer him homage after they won. And then we're going to see Odysseus kills somebody or blinds somebody very close to Poseidon. So Poseidon really has a grudge against him. At one point, he looks down, he sees Odysseus's ships on the sea, and he creates this giant storm and almost kills Odysseus and basically all of his men. But that is the road back. It's marked by a chase scene, and Poseidon chases Odysseus. The resurrection. Odysseus returns to Ithacan shores 20 years after he has left. But he returns home to find his kingdom of Ithaca has been besieged by suitors. So after about year 10, the Trojan Wars ended, but then 11 and 12, all the other Greek warriors return home, but not Odysseus. So all the eligible bachelors realize, hey, there's a vacant throne up there. So they all move in. It is tradition in Greeks, even today, you are kind to a traveler. You never know if it's a god in disguise. So, of course, Penelope, being the good Greek, she feeds them and lets them stay, and they basically move in and they're just a bunch of freeloaders. They're also plotting to kill Telemachus. Why would they do that? Well, Telemachus is the boy king. He is growing up and he will inherit his father's throne, but without his dad, he doesn't really know he's becoming a man. He's missing all of these points. Like, you have these watershed moments, these rites of passage, turning 13, the first time you have a teen in your name, getting 16, your driver's license, 18, you can vote. Telemachus doesn't go hunting with his dad, doesn't have these rites of passage, doesn't realize he's growing up, but he is certainly a danger to the suitors. So they're plotting to kill him. They want to marry Penelope. They want to steal his kingdom. Odysseus must battle the suitors to reclaim his throne. Last but not least, return, often called return with the elixir. Odysseus defeats the suitors, restoring balance. We even get help from Athena. This kind of shows that the gods are supporting him. In some versions, he's carrying a plank of wood. In other ones, it's an oar. Sometimes it's a staff. It's always a piece of wood that he carries. He plants in the ground. It grows into a tree, and the idea is that it's symbolic, that the Ithacan land will forever be his, and it's blessed by the gods. Thus, his 20-year journey, his 20-year odyssey is over. And here we have Odysseus being plugged into the hero cycle.